Thanks everybody for tuning in on Twitch here. We're co-hosting this Bridgecrew and Palo Alto networks. I'm here with Idan and Varun, and we're really just gonna have a quick conversation about the future of cloud security and what our recent acquisition means for both of us. This is 45 minutes. Please feel free to ask questions in the Twitch chat. We'll try to get to them as we go. We probably won't have time at the end to address any of them, so please ask them as you think of them. And towards the end, we are going to share a link to grab some Bridgecrew swag. So stay tuned throughout and you will get some stickers and a shirt. All right, I will take it away. Let Idan and Varun take it away.
Thanks, Peyton. Idan, welcome to Palo Alto Networks. It's great to have you and your team joining us here.
Thanks, Varun. It's exciting, and look forward to this chat.
Yeah, likewise. So maybe let me start with the kind of most basic, what I think we found very insightful when we started having conversations with you at Bridgecrew initially, which is, tell us, like, what's the history? How did you and your co-founders come up with the idea? Kind of what was that market insight, market need you guys identified, and how does Bridgecrew solve that today?
Yeah, well, let's take a step back. Bridgecrew was founded 2 years ago, and we didn't call it shift left back then. We didn't. I'm not sure even we knew what is shift left. But we just saw a bigger growing gap between DevOps and security. We knew great tools like Prisma. I think back then it was Redlock. Probably you heard about Redlock. And we knew that great tools, and these tools are getting even better and better in identifying the gaps and identifying the risks in your public cloud, right? And we saw more and more customers and teams using these tools, including Prisma. And for the first time, customers saw, whoa, we now understand, if we are secured or if we are not. And then more and more of these risks were translated into Jira tickets. Now somebody in DevOps needed to actually fix these issues. And if like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was kind of a limited time and work for DevOps, now these tasks became like significant. And DevOps asked themselves, hey, whoa, this is our job now, right? We need to make these things more secure. And the majority of DevOps teams, as we saw, like when we founded the company 2 years ago, some of them didn't really understand security. And if they did, they didn't have the know-how and the equipment and the tools to fix these issues. And we saw this gap, and we thought, hey, we want to close this gap, and we want to focus actually on the DevOps persona, on the DevOps engineering. We think we needed to think how to empower them, how to equip them with all the tools they need to run cloud security in scale. And we saw that, Varun, we saw that DevOps. Definitely 2 years ago, definitely now, they started to use infrastructure as code. More and more of infrastructure as code, frameworks like Terraform and CloudFormation. And we had now, I could share with you, we have customers that almost 100% of their infrastructure is managed in code, in Terraform, for example. And they ask themselves, hey, if we're managing our infrastructure in code, how come we're not managing our infrastructure security in code as well? And we understood that actually we could leverage that. We could leverage infrastructure as code to codify security for them, to translate the world of cloud security into their language, into their frameworks, into their tool chain, into their CI/CD, into code. And this is how we came up with the idea to take cloud security, translate cloud security into code, into infrastructure as code, and by that, giving them equipment, giving DevOps teams equipment and tools and know-how to run cloud security much faster. And this is how we came up with the name, Bridgecrew. First, probably you know that we are big fans of Star Trek. But second, we just thought that this is the time, this is the moment to bridge between security and DevOps.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story. And just in short order, you built a phenomenal company. Well, speaking of Star Trek fans, you have this thing called Chekhov. It's pretty amazing. You kind of one of the fastest growing open source projects out there. As a startup, you kind of your VCs, your everybody around you is wondering what's your path to monetization, how do you build a kind of long-lived enterprise company. How did you come up with this idea that you wanted to do open source, and kind of what were those trade-off conversations you were having between having this to kind of just get a lot of mind share, get a lot of success and adoption, and kind of how did you guys convince yourselves and investors that would then support your long-term growth of the company?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't trivial at the beginning. In retrospect, everything is trivial. At the beginning, it wasn't trivial. We didn't think that we need to open source it. We didn't think that we didn't plan to build an open source based company. We did it. But one of the first decisions we've made is, as I mentioned, was to focus on infrastructure as code. Goes without saying. And I think it was Barak, my co-founder and our CTO, that thought, hey, everything starts with identifying misconfigurations in Terraform, and then CloudFormation, Kubernetes, and more and more. But it started with Terraform. And we thought, hey, like everybody more or less is using Terraform or CloudFormation. By the way, if you're using the Terraform registry, last year we published a report about that, which is great. It's open source, it's public-based, everybody is using it. Probably if you're a DevOps engineer, a good chance that you are getting some misconfigurations inside your environment. And man, this is risky, but it's so natural, because infrastructure as code by definition is something that it's being driven by the community, right? And it's being written by the community. And if you are a DevOps engineer and you wrote a template, I will share it with the community. It's great. This is how you share and you create more content. But also it's risky. And this is why we said, okay, let's start with just identifying misconfigurations and showing them to the community. And I think this was the moment we understood that instead of us writing in the lab, now garage, in our lab, some policies and some checks to identify misconfigurations in Terraform, let's build it, but let's build it with the community. The developers themselves, they know more than anybody else what is good and what is bad, what misconfiguration you should identify and you should emphasize on, and what misconfig you don't, because it's not really important. And this is why we said open source it is the right thing to do, because the community could share more content and it could emphasize, it could focus everybody and on the right things, on the important things. And we started that. I remember it was December 2019. We had the first download of Chekhov. We, of course, started to maintain it. Till now, we're the biggest maintainers, of course. And, we have now, like, a year and 3 months later, we have more than 1,300,000 downloads of Chekhov. And you're right, it became one of the fastest growing open source tools today in infrastructure security. And the coolest thing is that it's not the number of developers working on it. It's not the number of downloads or Chekhov stars. The biggest thing that we are proud of is the contribution of the community. The community contributes back to the policies and checks and integrations. And this is why we are big believers in Chekhov, and we will continue, to invest a lot in Chekhov and in other open source tools today. We truly believe it.
That's interesting and amazing, kind of the traction you've gotten in a short amount of time. But let's address that elephant in the room. You just touched on it. You've been acquired by Palo Alto Networks. Palo Alto Networks has traditionally been an enterprise company, security focused. Here Bridgecrew is coming along on the developer side of security, kind of this new motion, heavy emphasis on open source. What's the future? What's the future of open source here, you think? I know you and I have spoken at length at it, but I'll let you share with our with our listeners today on what the plans are.
Yeah, I mean, when we started to talk to your team and to you and to the other leadership of Palo Alto, we asked Palo Alto, hey, I mean, do you believe in open source? I mean, it's not something that usually we were used to see coming from Palo Alto, and we loved the answer. The answer was, oh yeah, and we need more. And I think, and I would love to hear your thoughts about it, but as we see it, Chekhov is just the beginning. We believe that in order to provide value to the DevOps engineer, in order to make this gap smaller between security and DevOps, yeah, open source is a big part of it. We want to share tools with the community. We want to provide them tools to share back to each other. We want to create this network effect. Everybody would benefit from it. And we have like really creative, ambitious ideas of what to do next. And I'm not sure now it's the right time to expose them, but
I think
after your thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be back here in a couple months talking a lot more about the progress we've made since then. Yeah, look, I think what's clear to us is there's 26 million developers, 3 million security professionals. The odds are stacked against security people, right? Developers have even more automation in place in addition to just the pure numbers game. And so things need to be done differently for security in the cloud. And we think the approach that Bridgecrew has taken is phenomenal. It's smart, it's creative, it attacks the right problem at the right time with the right degree of automation and integration into the developer and DevOps workflows. And we love that. I think the other thing we also realize is how important this community is going to be for us to continue to engage in, partner with, and kind of co-develop technologies and tools with, which kind of I'm referring to this open source community, which hopefully will grow larger and larger with some of the kind of plans that you and I have discussed on our roadmap, right? Which, again, we'll share limited information on today, but hopefully in a few weeks we'll be able to share a lot more on. And the other reality is, look, Bridgecrew with 38 people, in your team, and while you try to do the best you could to allocate some of your R&D folks to just focus on open source, the reality is, with Prisma Cloud, forget Palo Alto Networks, just Prisma Cloud, we have several hundred engineers, and our ability to really invest into the community, at scale is much higher. Because for you, you're at that constant battle. Well, I've got to get my next round of funding. For that, I have to show, yes, community and engagement, but I also have to show revenue in dollars near term. Yeah. With Palo Alto Networks, and especially with Prisma Cloud and our aspirations, we can make long-term bets, and we can make long-term bets that say, I understand, community, there's no immediate, dollar return on investment on community, but that's fine. We're doing this because we're learning, we're building the best technologies that eventually will provide a lot of customer delight and will pay long-term dividends. So really excited about that, and hope to share more in the coming weeks.
Yeah, definitely agree. And another thing we got really excited about when we started to deal with Chekhov is that the power, the strength of open source is also in education and in training. When we want to, make infrastructure as code secured, it's not only about sharing tools and sharing scanners, and it's also about educating developers on what does it mean to have secured infrastructure. And for us, open source is a great tool to do that. And in the last couple of months, we saw more and more academies, and we saw more and more teams actually educating other developers about security using Chekhov and using other open source tools we launched recently, like TerraGo. And for us also, it's a very it's a clear goal of ours to help the community get education and I don't know, and train them about how to make security and give them the know-how to do that.
Yeah, speaking of training, this morning before we logged in here, I was reading, I was going through my LinkedIn feed, and there's a very interesting perspective that somebody posted saying, hey, we're always talking about how to get our developers and DevOps teams to understand security and train developers on security. Why don't we ever train security people on development and development practices and kind of turn the table so they can understand and appreciate what goes on the other side? And so it kind of brings me to a question, what's wrong with saying, hey, Mr. Developer, go take some security courses and write secure code, right? What's the value of automation, of checks, of infrastructure as code, from build time to runtime, and just overall, taking a step back, what are the differences and pain points between security and development teams?
Wow, that's a big one. And I would love to hear your perspective on that. I think if I need to generalize, security and developer security and DevOps, they're like talking in two different languages, right? And security teams, that they care and they should care about policies and about governance, and they have to think about threats and risks, and they need to translate them into work plans and into remediation plans. When developers and DevOps, they care about productivity and time. They have to move faster. They have to build their own tools to build. So the tools will allow them to build infrastructure faster and with less resources. And by definition, if you think about it, in almost 100% of the companies, the developers outnumber the security teams. So you have many more developers and more DevOps. And by definition, you, as the business owner of, in the company, you want developers to move faster than security. So it's asymmetric, combat. And we have to make these teams work together. If we want, applications, if we want businesses to run faster and bigger, they have to be more secure, and we have to make security teams and developers working together. We need to translate each one's needs, and we need to bridge this gap. And you asked me what's wrong in coming to the developer and train him or her with some courses and with some tools. First of all, maybe it's good. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you need to do that, but it's not enough. I mean, if we want developers to understand security and to implement that, first, I believe it's a matter of trust. You have to give them tools so they will trust the tools and they will trust the security needs. And what we've learned is that you create trust by sharing know-how and by explaining, by giving context. So it's not enough to tell a developer, hey, this code you just wrote is super risky. Replace it, please. And no, that's not enough. It's maybe tactical, but it's not helping strategically. You need to give developers context. So you need to explain to the developers why is this risky? Why is this misconfiguration problematic? What kind of implications, possible implications on the application, on the security, on compliance can it create? And also, and this is another thing we understood, and I believe this is why community really loves Bridgecrew. We understood that it's not enough to pop up a problem to the developer. It's not enough to say, hey, here's a Jira ticket. If you want to create trust, if you want to create productivity, you want to pop up the solution to the developer. You want to pop up the fix, and the fix has to be in code. And if the fix will be in code, if the fix will be with the right context, in the long run, it just creates trust. And if you go back to the security team, same thing. If you could help them translate policies and governance, everything we just discussed, into code, for the first time, DevOps and security could talk in the same language, in the same framework called code or policy as code. And we started this journey. I'm proud that we are one of the pioneers of this new movement, but it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning, and I believe we could do much more, and we will.
Yeah, I'll share my perspective on this. A little known secret: I have our own kind of pretty large, globally distributed SaaS platform for Prisma Cloud that we deploy, where I would be a customer for someone like you. And I'm always spending time with my DevOps team saying like how is it going and what are the issues you're having with different security tools you're using. I think it's like a couple of different things, and you touched on some of this. One is they really want to break out compliance versus true security risks impacting their application. Like in their mind, they're like if you bubble it all together, yeah, some things I need to do, but I can get done later. There are certain things I need to do absolutely now, here, right this second, because they're impacting my security, right? And could cause an immediate impact to my business. So part of that is just clarity there. I think the other part to them is, like you said, like dumb it down, meaning, in security, we're very used to there's an alert, then there's a team that investigates the alert, comes out with some, kind of reactions or ideas coming out of that, and then those actions are kind of workflowed. Developers don't have that time or patience. Like developers and DevOps teams want the information, tell me why it's bad, here, now, how do I fix, and let me go do it. So I think those two areas are probably different ways of thinking. And I think the third is just the kind of time that security tooling typically takes to produce results. Part of it is then with a lot of false positives, and then you got to flush through that and really get the wheat from the chef. And again, because of the level of automation that developers and DevOps teams have got accustomed to, they just don't have patience for that, right? Like it's like deploy it, automate it, integrate it into my workflow, be done with it. Don't stop me 15 minutes before I'm supposed to go into production and say I can't. All right.
Exactly. And maybe I will add that another thing that creates this trust is the fact that shifting left policies could actually prevent, we didn't talk about that, could actually prevent misconfigurations from happening. The first phase of it. And what we've learned from our community, from our users, that if you take more and more policies and put them at the first stage of the CI/CD when they're just building the environment, so you could prevent the majority of misconfigs, and that creates great happiness with the developers, for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we have a question from one of the attendees here, which is, speaking of trusting developers, do you think true DevSecOps with no human reviews before commit is possible? So what's your take on that?
Well, I have a scoop. I will share one of the things we never shared. At the beginning of Bridgecrew, we thought everything should be fully automatic. And we thought, hey, let's build like a great tool. We have great technology, and let's do it automatic as possible. And we found that it's not the right thing to do. We found that if you want to build a solution in scale, you have to trust the developers to do that. You could never think in advance, ever, never. And even using AI, I believe you could not think of all scenarios, of all risks, all misconfigurations. It will always need somebody human to review and to make a decision. What you can do is to equip them and to empower them and to give them all the tools they could have and to give them the context and to give them even the fix. So it will be a decision and then like double click and with a pull request and it will solve the problem. But it will never fully replace, I believe, the human aspect here. What do you think, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like a philosophical debate, but I tend to agree with you. I think, just like I have a similar philosophy on AI as well. I think like human assisted is probably the best way to think about a lot of, security automation. And so I think even if you can take 80-90% of the manual work and take it and completely automate it, there's still the 10%, 15% that needs to happen, which is good because we'll all have jobs to kind of work through with these tools hand in hand. Idan, one kind of, I guess, getting to some closing thoughts question for you, which is, obviously I've told you in the beginning, we're very excited to bring you on board. We're really excited about the partnership opportunity here for us to do great things together. But I want to hear from you, right? I'm sure you and your founders and your investors discussed, why joining forces with Prisma Cloud would be great. So I want to hear from you, like, what's the vision? What were the takeaways? Why are you guys excited about this kind of partnership and joining your forces?
Yeah, well, first of all, we are super excited, and the feedback that we're getting from our customers and the community just empowers our feeling. I mean, I think it's the classic 1 + 1 = not maybe 3, but actually 10. I believe that a cloud security world is going to change. And I think that in a couple of years, if you want to have cloud security in scale, you have to have a solution that will work from code to cloud, from build time to runtime. And it has to be a very strong solution. And it seems like very easy when you're talking in presentations and in conferences, but we all know it's much more challenging than that, to build a solution that the entire team in the company would use. Developers that they don't understand security, DevOps, security, compliance teams. It's challenging, and I believe that this merger actually could change the way the industry, the cloud security industry, work. I think for the first time, we're going to have a platform that does work code to cloud, build time to runtime. It will allow us to focus on our passion in helping DevOps, in giving them tools and provide the open source community more capabilities and work with the community to build more tools. And it will allow security teams, and it will allow Prisma to take capabilities from the DevOps world, and it will allow us to take the capabilities that Palo Alto has and translate them to DevOps. I think it's an amazing opportunity, not only for us and for Palo Alto customers. I truly believe it will change the industry. But how do you see that?
Yeah, look, the nice thing about everything we've been busy doing here with Prisma Cloud or Palo Alto Networks is, we have 1,800 plus customers, 70+% of the Fortune 100 use and trust Prisma Cloud to really help them as they're moving more applications and workloads to the cloud. And granted, we've taken a security first approach, right? But the focus has been, how do we ensure that we do not repeat the sins of the past? Now, what do I mean by sins of the past? As an industry, if you look at your security footprint for data centers, it's a mess, right? It's like a chiclet slide where every customer has 80, 90, 100 plus vendors providing different point security capabilities, none of which talk to each other. So then the customer adds another layer of like a SIM or some kind of aggregation layer, and then they have some workflow and prioritization for alerting. It's a real mess. We think, and what we have believed in for the last 2.5 years, is there's an opportunity with the cloud to fix this, to finally provide a single pane of glass for security for our customers. And that just means that we have to address network security, infrastructure security, data security, identity, network, application security, which, we've been busy doing. Now, we also recognize that you can't just check some boxes and tell customers that, they should buy your product offering. We think you have to be absolute best of breed in every single use case that you solve. Otherwise, the customers will end up buying point products and you'll be back to the same mess. So that's kind of where our kind of M&A strategies play in, because we're very open-minded. We look at something that we want to go after. We assess the market to see, is there somebody who's out there that is well established in providing those capabilities to the customers, that there's lots of usage behind, or do we believe that we can do a much better job starting from scratch in the right amount of time? And that kind of drives our strategy of build, buy, or partner. And I think for us, with having said that, clearly today our customers are using Prisma Cloud for multiple, use cases. You have cloud security posture management, you have cloud workload protection. But I think what I'm most excited about is, for the first time in the industry, we will collectively, with joining forces with Bridgecrew, be able to provide security from build time to deploy time to runtime, single set of policies such that developers and security practitioners are speaking the same language. But with us coming together, we will not only do this for infrastructure, but we will do this for application security as well. So you have infrastructure and application, build time to runtime. There's no other solution in the industry that even comes close to that.
Totally agree. And I'm excited about this because I think we will build a path for the industry, and I think customers will benefit from it, and the community, and it's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. Well, Idan, this was fantastic. I know we have to get right back to work to build those amazing integrations for our customers from build time to runtime. We just said it. So, I want to thank everybody for joining us in this kind of live discussion, and looking forward to sharing many more great things coming out from Prisma Cloud and Bridgecrew. Thanks, everyone.